And hello, everybody. A very happy Saturday to you all, or Sunday if you happen to be in that part of the world. I know my part of the world gets to Sunday later than other parts of the world. But if you're here on Saturday, happy Saturday. Well, tonight we are back for more of Spear of Destiny, Finding Bucephalus by Mary Lou Wells, edited for you by Kira Holiday. Are you excited? Are you ready? For those of you guys who remember from our last reading, which happened to be Tuesday, if you missed it, I understand. All of the recorded chapters are available. Hello, Stick571. All of the recorded chapters are available on the YouTube channel, ready for you to go and watch. All of them just there for you. Of course, you can also go pick up the book. The author's book is available on Amazon. Feel free to stop out there and pick it up. And other than that, hello. We will go ahead and read through. So, Stick, this is a live reading. I do indie author books and live readings of indie author books every Tuesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern. This is probably the, 10th, 11th, 12th. I haven't actually checked into exactly how many this is. Not a bot at all. A bot? Not me. I am a voice actor. I am a professional narrator. I am a live reader. And I do this for our indie authors because, honestly, one thing that you never knew about indie authors is they have to write the book, they have to edit the book. Most of the times, especially with an indie author, they're the ones who publish the book. They're the ones who, 8 p.m. Eastern time, they are the ones who have to do all of the marketing for the book. There's no publishing house behind them getting those books into bookstores for them. There's nobody out there doing any advertising other than what the author does. And there is so much good stuff out there by our indie authors. For example, Spear of Destiny is an award-winning book. Did you know that? It is. Mary could probably tell you a little bit more about exactly what it is. Mary Lou Wells is here with us right now. Feel free to ask her questions on the YouTube channel, of course. But being an indie author means that you have to do every aspect of the book process. You have to take it from soup to nuts. You have to do the writing, the editing, the beta readers, the alpha readers, all of that stuff. You have to go and find somebody who will print your book for you. All of this work that has to go into creating a novel and getting it out to people to be able to enjoy it. You're literally leaving. Well, all right. You go ahead and do that. We appreciate your being here and hope you come back and check it out again another time. But that is why I do what I do and give these live readings for our indie authors, because it is important to them to be able to have an additional venue to be able to get their information out there and to everybody. So, if you're here for it, fantastic. We are happy that you are here for it. If you're not here for it, well, that is up to you. But we hope you'll stick around and check it out. And of course, you can always get out there and check the chapter replays on the YouTube channel. Or Rumble. I put them up on Rumble too. I'm everywhere. Didn't you know? And so, on that note, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We are excited to get into our next chapter. So, in our last read, we found out that Bucephalus is actually Mary Lou from the book. Oh, one of our main characters. is the reincarnation of Bucephalus, who, of course, is an angel and all that kind of fun stuff. And now we have Kenneth, who will be writing Bucephalus. Kenneth, which it appears, and we haven't heard for sure, but might be the reincarnation of Alexander. Ah, Alexander. And if that's the case, he will be writing Bucephalus in the Wild Hunt, which will be starting this evening. So, wherever you happen to be, sit back, relax, and prepare to enjoy. If you happen to be in a hot place, get yourself a cold drink. If you happen to be in a cold place, get yourself a hot drink. And we are ready to get ourselves started with Spear of Destiny by Mary Lou Wells, edited by Kira Holiday. One quick housekeeping note, I do record the chapters, so I encourage you to chat with each other during the stream. Best place to do so is on the YouTube channel, because, hey, that's where our author is. But best place to do so is on the YouTube channel. Stop in, say hello, chat with each other, and I will be happy to chat with you in between the chapters. And now, here we go, as we get started into 13, The Wild Hunt. The Wild Hunt headed north from Rockwood toward Harriman along the base of the Cumberland Escarpment. The mountain ridge loomed large to their left. The dogs with the horses following close on their heels soon found footing just wide enough single file along the train tracks to hit a rolling canter. A dense fog quickly arose, and the hounds' baying echoed from all directions at once as the sound mingled with the thunder. Kenneth blinked in the rain and hoped Bucephalus could see better than he could in the rainy darkness. The only lights he could use to discern the path ahead were the sparks struck by Bloodwine's hooves from each step and the occasional flash of lightning. The streets in Harriman were largely deserted when they got to the city. Odin led them away from the tracks and backtracked up a steep bank before reaching the river. Kenneth recognized the West Hill subdivision entrance as they made the quick turn left onto the paved road and headed up a massive hill. "We're going up the mountain to Buzzard's Bluff?" Kenneth questioned. The only answer from his mount was an ear flicked back. He could feel Bucephalus's powerful rear end dig in and push up the steep incline. When they got to the base of the final climb, they slowed to a walk to give the horses a breather. Skuld dropped Icewings back beside Kenneth. "Stay to the right in the tire tracks next to the rock wall and avoid the ruts," Skuld told him. "The footing is treacherous, especially now with the rainwater gushing through the washouts. It will be slick with red clay on wet pavement in places, and gravel rolling underfoot. We can't let the horses go down. Some of the ruts are belly deep on the steepest portion of our climb. The road is packed clay at the top, but it's okay. Take your time and help Bucephalus watch his footing." "Gotcha." Kenneth nodded in agreement. It had been a while since he was here, but he remembered deep potholes and poor road maintenance. "Any more advice?" Skuld grinned. "Hold on," she answered. "I'll see you at the top." Skuld forged ahead and led the way again. The dogs dropped back and paced alongside. Kenneth laid the reins along his horse's neck and helped the stallion steer around the worst holes as they struggled in the rain up the steep hill. Bucephalus was blowing a little by the time the rain led up to a light misting sprinkle. He saw that the worst of it was mostly below them with a strong wind that rose straight up the whole side of the bluff. His goosebumps told him how chilled he was in his drenched state, but he ignored it, wiped his eyes, and stopped his horse for a brief rest. Though only a half-moon shone above them, their path was brightly lit. It contrasted pleasantly with the darkness they'd traveled through so far. When Bucephalus's breathing slowed, they continued the climb. The footing here was looser, where water from the rain cascaded off the rocks above them. Mud and stones had washed into the road. Kenneth let go of the reins with one hand to stroke the horse's neck for encouragement when he was nearly unseated. A grinding crunch sounded underneath them as Bucephalus's left shoulder went out from underneath him in a sliding stumble. "Skuld, hold! There's a problem back here," he yelled ahead of them as Bucephalus came up limping. "We're gonna have to stop," he muttered to his horse. Bucephalus snorted and shook his mane, scattering water over his rider. He took 2 more stumbling steps and nearly went down again, but refused to stop. Instead, he set his head, determined to keep going despite the sharp stone that was firmly wedged in the frog of his front left heel. "I said stop!" Kenneth growled at the horse. "Now isn't the time to be stubborn. You can do that later on your own terms." Kenneth slid down off the saddle and nearly fell himself on the slick footing as muddy gravel rolled underfoot. He realized Bucephalus was holding his left front hoof up. "Let me see," Kenneth coaxed. He ran his hands down the horse's muddy leg and prodded the groove in the sole of his foot until he found the stone. Bucephalus pulled his foot away and set it down firmly. Kenneth somehow wasn't surprised at the stallion's determined huff. "No," Kenneth said. "We have to get that out before you go anywhere." Bucephalus's answer was a sassy toss of his heavily maned head. The horse looked up the hill with his ears pricked as a red horse approached out of the darkness. Odin on Bloodwine loomed over them, but suddenly they were not what the teens saw. Kenneth shook his head as a vision flashed so strongly it nearly set him back on his heels. It came to his mind's eye in full living color. "Bring me that red mare with the blaze," Alexander ordered, and the relieved groom hurried off. Alexander rose and caressed Bucephalus's neck, feeling the hardness of the muscles. "You're gonna have to sit this one out," Alexander whispered to his horse regretfully. "You need to take it easy on that leg, so you don't end up with a bowed tendon." The black horse turned his one blue eye on his rider and blew softly with a disapproving look. He stretched out, lowering his back for Alexander to mount. "Not today." Alexander patted him with finality and turned away. "We will ride together another day," he told Bucephalus. He looked up to see his orders had been carried out. "Ah, yes, this will do." The red mare that he had indicated he would ride was led to him. She was sturdy but sleek, with a fineness about her that spoke of speed and good breeding. He had his back turned to his stallion and did not see what the men standing in front of him saw when Alexander picked up his pad and placed it on the mare's back. They began shouting a warning, too late. Unrestrained, Bucephalus realized that another horse was to carry his beloved Alexander, spun in place with his ears flattened and teeth bared. He avoided hitting Alexander with his hooves as he reared and grabbed the mare's throat in his teeth and bore her to the ground. Men and horses scattered, trying to put distance between themselves and Alexander's furious warhorse. Alexander stood still, watching thoughtfully, not wanting to waste a good mare. He stepped forward as Bucephalus held onto the other horse's throat until her eyes started rolling back in her head. The red mare was helpless. "Bucephalus!" Alexander shouted at his horse. "Let go!" He commanded it in a tone that made men jump and stand at attention in fright. Bucephalus merely cocked an ear and grudgingly released the mare, who lay panting for several moments. The whites of her eyes still showed as she was slowly encouraged to her feet by Alexander, who didn't stop to contemplate any further. He waved her away, picked up his pad, and placed it on the stallion's back. "I should kick your ass for that," he muttered to the horse. "You're too damn stubborn for your own good. I'd like to get you home in one piece, not run you into the ground." Alexander grabbed his horse's head and planted a kiss on his nose. "But if you insist on being an idiot, we have places to go. If your leg is hurt, you are going to just have to suck it up. We can't stop again until we're out of these mountains, and we may have to fight our way clear to Zadrakarta." Kenneth shook his head to clear it and bring himself back to the present. He set his mouth in a grim line. "Stubborn. Always," he muttered. "Let me see if there's a hoof-pick in the pack." A quick search turned up empty. "Wrong pack," Odin told him. Chuck the other side under the flaps." Kenneth found what he was looking for and took hold of Bucephalus's hoof in a firm grip. A grinding sound came from the horse's hoof as the hoof-pick pried the sharp stone out. He wiped his hands and the pick before he stuck it in his pocket. Then, rather than have his mount go down again, Kenneth took the horse's head and led him on foot to guide him carefully out of the worst of the debris. For several more minutes, they followed the road as it wound along the spine of the mountain toward the bluff. It seemed with every step that the moonlight got brighter until they reached the area where the trees opened up at the bluff. Looking down, they could see the lights like hundreds of fireflies in the night, sprinkled along the valley's hills over Harriman and Rockwood. A layer of fog softened the angles and curves of the landscape and gave even the interstate traffic an eerie glow. Kenneth might have appreciated the breathtaking view more, except he knew they weren't here for the scenery. When they reached the top, Kenneth remounted his horse. "Now what?" he asked Skuld. "We're at the end of the road." "No, we are at the beginning," Skuld told him, and pointed up. The moon hung directly over the drop-off. Arunel's silvery serpentine shape danced through the churning clouds below the bluff. An impossibly stiff wind was rising harder as it blew straight up. The moonlight filtered through the mist on fluffy white clouds, reflecting it even stronger. As he watched, a ring formed in the air around the moon. Impossibly, he could see brilliant rainbow colors as a rare phenomenon called a moonbow appeared in the air in front of them. Kenneth drew his breath at the sight, but he eyed the lights of the interstate traffic he could see far below. Roxy turned to look at him, barked once, ran at the edge of the rocks, and jumped. The rest of the pack followed quickly off the edge. Bloodwine reared and made a mighty leap up. For a moment he hovered. Then, with his hooves still striking sparks like lightning in midair, he continued up and disappeared. Kenneth groaned as Bucephalus gathered himself, seeing where the others were going. "Is it too late to mention I don't like heights?" Kenneth sat back and found himself pulling back involuntarily on the reins. In response, Bucephalus backed several quick steps. When Icewing also jumped, and his snow-white wings caught the air currents, Bucephalus dropped his head, dug in, and pulled the reins loose from his rider's hands. The big black stallion charged forward and left the bluff's edge at full gallop, with Kenneth holding on to the neck strap in a vice grip. Knowing it shouldn't be possible, Kenneth nearly jumped out of his skin when Bucephalus also spread ebony wings with a furious snap and was lifted upward toward the ring of colored light by the rising wind current. Bucephalus glided through the storm-driven atmospheric portal in the astral veil with several strong wing beats. They emerged onto the rainbow bridge and the space between. A riot of brilliant color and bright light hit Kenneth's eyes as soon as he crossed to the other side. "What the?" A wave of dizziness nearly sent him reeling as the act of crossing over also stripped all memory blocks and filters from his mind. Bucephalus simultaneously finally found his brakes and slid to a slightly bouncy stop. At first, his watering eyes and confusion kept Kenneth from realizing the two tall, dark-colored figures barring further progress, with crossed spear and crook, were actually there. Bucephalus, blowing hard from the effort of getting them to that point, also stood shaking his head to clear it. Feeling Kenneth reeling on his back, he kept his wings raised to help prevent his rider from falling. Memories from many places and times, identities and names, families, struggles and tragedies, and past loves and losses hit them simultaneously. Bucephalus, wearing the skin of a horse, once again remembered leading the charge into battle with Alexander, urging him to fight. He reared to his full height, bugling an aggressive challenge. The Macedonian language came to Kenneth's lips unbidden, challenging the English, Latin, Scandinavian, German, and Japanese that were all crowding in together. "Bucephalus, Prestenant," he scolded his stallion. "Taishi, nein, no! Let me get my bearings, would you? God, I didn't expect that." He struggled with writing the language he was speaking along with his spinning head. He blinked several times and rubbed his eyes, which began to adjust to the fact that he could see color for the first time in his current incarnation. The figures that blocked his way still stood there, expectantly. "More gods," Kenneth observed. "Am I supposed to bow or something? 'Cause it's a little hard from the back of a horse." Bucephalus shook his head, making his thick mane fall to both sides. Bowing his neck, he extended his wings to their full span, and then folded them back down into himself. He nickered softly to the figures standing in front of them. To the right of them, Anubis chuckled, and on the left, Set simply grinned, flashing very sharp teeth. They both lowered their weapons. "Once again, at the turning of the age, the champions come forth. I hope for all our sakes that this turn is not as disastrous as the first," Anubis said. Bucephalus, recognizing him, paced forward and shoved his head into the god. In response, Anubis wrapped his arm around the reddish-black stallion's head affectionately and reached out with his other hand, producing a green apple. "It's good to see you too, Miamere." Anubis ruffled Bucephalus's forelock as the horse made sloppy, drooling work of the apple. "Don't fear," Anubis said to Kenneth. "It is an earthly apple from a wild orchard. It will not force Bucephalus to stay. Your arrival was expected." Set, still grinning toothfully, looked Kenneth up and down. My, how far you've come, and many miles yet to go. Are you sure you're ready for this?" Kenneth bared his teeth as well, responding with a slight smile. "Am I ready? Well, let's see. At this point, I've been run over, nearly drowned, blasted by lava, attacked by a demon, and now I jumped off a cliff. I think I can handle about anything." It was Set's turn to chuckle. "I would expect no less from any of my warrior elite," he said, "which is why I felt it appropriate to meet you here myself. I still have and protect what belongs to you. As you are on this perilous quest, you may decide you want them returned to you." Kenneth felt a rise of distaste. Deep inside, he felt a coldness in his soul where his loss had been far too great to bear. He knew what Set offered, as he had at the moment the full memory of how, and more importantly why, Set held them. Still, the teen waited, knowing that this was part of the ceremony and the choice made of his own free will. Set moved another step forward and came within reach of Kenneth. In one hand he held a sharpened gold and bronze khopesh. With the other, Set carefully held a beating heart. "As you have requested many Earth years ago in Egypt, I have kept these safe for you. As of this moment, you have a choice. You may take one, or you may take both. However, you will be unable to set them down again until your duty is done," Set told him. Kenneth still calmly sat his horse. He reached out and took his sword from the patron of warriors. "You can keep that other thing for now. I don't need that where I'm going," he said. "Very soon I will be joining the American military, and it would again just be in the way of my duty." "It is indeed your choice, as it always was. But there are times when even warriors find they need their heart. Eventually, you must take it. You can change your mind. Call on it at any time," Set responded and stepped back. "Go with my blessings and our Heavenly Father's blessings." Kenneth nodded and saluted with the khopesh. They moved forward to rejoin Skuld. Anubis stood beside his brother and watched them ride away. "He is not whole. Are you certain of this, Lord Set?" Set replied, "He is certain. For this moment, it is all that matters. The wheel turns. The threads of fate have been laid before them. Anubis nodded. Many possibilities remain, and they must be free to choose. Set has always chosen, Set replied. I would have him no other way. Kenneth's head had mostly stopped spinning by the time they caught up with Skuld and Odin. Roxy had dropped back out of the pack to pace them. She raced ahead again, sniffing. So, now, how do we find what we're looking for? Kenneth asked. Are we just following where the dog leads, or are we supposed to do something? Yes and yes, Odin told him. Roxy will take the lead. Now that the power of the Wild Hunt has allowed you to cross the veil without physical death, the whole pack is unnecessary. For the duration, due to the nature of the quest, you will mostly operate on this side of reality. Roxy's guidance will allow you to jump between and across the spaces of existence. But you must also hunt, use your wits, and make decisions. Skuld will go with you part way. Do not rely on her, or you will not succeed. As you have already observed, it is a tool forged by the hand of man, and the rulers of the Prime Creator forbid any of us to interfere with you or touch the Spear of Destiny ourselves. Skuld nodded in agreement. She continued the conversation where Odin left off. I am your support, partly for safety. Despite what you may think should be, the lower paths are riddled with mists of confusion, and if you happen upon the river Styx or Lethe, you will be lost to us. To try to cross either without the aid of the ferryman would mean soul death. Additionally, not all demoni are confined to what you call hell or wandering the earth plane. The multiverse is a vast place, Skuld said. These creatures are born not just darkness, but the kind of evil darkness that was never meant to be created. Most fallen ones are scattered, but they are not the only dark spirits corrupted by or born of this devouring evil. Some find their way to the paths and hide between what you understand as real space. They will seek to devour anything they believe is easy prey on the paths, including wandering or lost souls, or those demoni who are weaker than they in their quest for power. Odin chimed back in. Skuld will see it to you. He smiled. Fate on your side is no small thing. He chuckled. Where will you be? Kenneth asked. I have to go. Odin smiled at the teen fondly. I have some business to dispense. They watched Odin ride away. Bloodwine's hooves struck sparks on the stones with his passing. He was out of sight when Skuld drew Kenneth's attention to her. Now that you understand the risks, I will tell you what you have to do and why, Skuld said. Several layers of protection guard the spear. Some are physical, and some are arcane. Even though the Spear of Destiny is indeed in the mortal world, it would be impossible to reach it quickly, much less possess it. Even though this is a shortcut, so to speak, it will seem longer. Skuld continued. Unfortunately, I don't know exactly where the Spear of Destiny is myself, but I can tell you that you have to go through a series of tests. This is not just to see if you are worthy, but in a more practical sense, to trip a certain set of arcane triggers that together will open up the final destination for you. You have to trip 7 triggers according to the message brought to us by the Archangel. You will follow the dog. She will not be able to sniff out the next step until the present one is reached and done properly. Oh, I get it. Like a video game. Kenneth brightened. This ought to be fun. Skuld just stared at him. In this video game, you don't get a do-over. There are no extra lives, so don't screw it up. she told him sternly. You only have the life you came with. Although you may have the extra boost from Idun's apple, your beloved horse does not. Her eyebrows raised. Take care of your mount, and Bucephalus can take care of you. But also take care not to harm the harmless on the moon paths. Got it. No pressure. Kenneth nodded, grinning. Where do we start? The road is ahead of you. It's up to you, your horse, and the dog to work this out, Skuld answered him. You will have to work as a team. To remind you again, I am only along as an observer and an extra defender if it becomes necessary. Kenneth thought about what she said. Her clothing changed to a full set of heavily studded white armor as he watched. She practically glowed with light. The team remembered the dark poison the demon had left behind at the rest stop in the hotel. Skuld's get-up made him realize how lightly protected he was and how naked his horse was. He shrugged his shoulders. All joking aside, I will take it seriously, he told the power who was choosing to help them. Thank you for your assistance. Skuld nodded her head and said no more. She sat back in her saddle on Icewing's back. She waited with a long silver spear balanced across her lap. And Chapter 13 is complete. The wild hunt is ongoing. You know you like it. We're going to find out where the Spear of Destiny is. For those of you guys who have not followed along and haven't been here for a lot of this, any guesses as to what the Spear of Destiny is? Does anybody know? And no, the author and editors cannot answer. That would be cheating. You need to be able to have an idea on your own. Do you guys know just what the Spear of Destiny is? Maybe, maybe not. I guess we will find out, won't we? All right. Well, feel free to throw those guesses into chat, because if you've been reading along, you actually know what it is already. But for the rest of us, well, the rest of you, I should say, I guess we will find out, won't we? Well, I can't let you guys guess. You're intimately knowledgeable of the book. It's the same reason I can't guess. I happen to know the answer. Of course, I know the answer because we read it in here. Hey, amazing how that works, right? All right, guys, here we go with 14, the moon paths. Okay, Roxy, I guess it's up to us. Kenneth addressed the sleek, black and tan, long-nosed hound, which sat in front of them waiting. Let's finish this thing. We don't have all day to wait around. Wagging her tail, Roxy huffed at Kenneth. She got to her feet and began sniffing around. She stopped to look at him expectantly. Oh, I get it. You need a specific command, Kenneth said. Okay, Roxy, please find the Spear of Destiny, and we will follow you to it. There. Is that good enough? He laughed softly. Roxy barked 3 times, turned, and began running down the road. Bucephalus sat off on a ground-covering brisk trot behind the hound of the hunt. The horse's ears were pricked nearly to touching, with his head up so he could see the way ahead of them. Icewing and Skuld followed them. Kenneth settled in for the ride and relaxed, moving easily with the big horse. The terrain grew hilly and mostly covered with tall grass that looked like young wheat growing. Ahead the landscape rose sharply, reminding him of the Rocky Mountains that they had briefly skirted on their way to Washington State. Roxy sped up, and Bucephalus increased his speed to an easy canter to stay apace with her. They approached the hills, and Kenneth could see that the road led into a series of high ridges, which rose to each side. The gap narrowed and ended in a wall with a steep footpath which snaked up the side of a sheer cliff face and vanished halfway up. Hi, hi, Roxy, Kenneth called to the hound when she turned up this narrow path. In response, she barked 3 times and started climbing. Kenneth shrugged. Follow the dog, I guess, he told Bucephalus. She seems to know where she's going. He eyed the track up the hill. This might be easier if you were a goat, though. Can you do that? Or maybe we can just fly where we need to go. For that matter, where are we? Bucephalus shook his head and snorted. They found barely enough room to walk without Kenneth's leg being dragged against the cliff face as they started upward. Bucephalus pulled the reins and put his head down so he could see to pick his way. His rider held the reins loosely. Kenneth gripped the saddle and his horse's mane tightly just in case they slipped. The teen tried not to look down as they went higher, but his mount remained solid under him. When they were most of the way up the footpath, Kenneth realized that the rocks to the side and in front of them didn't look as solid. A secondary image of a moonlit path seemed imposed onto the rocks, akin to a TV screen. The light around them seemed dim. Ahead of them, Roxy looked back at them, took a step forward, and disappeared. Kenneth picked up the reins in a tight grip, but this time didn't try to yank back on his horse. Instead, he spoke to him in a firm voice. I don't know what this is, so let's assume since the dog just disappeared that we can treat this like a projected image rather than a solid something. Stay steady and walk forward slowly, one step at a time. We'll figure out what we've got here and how this works, he instructed the pricked ears in front of him. He nudged the dark horse's ribs lightly with his toes. Go, Kenneth commanded. The sleek stallion moved forward under Kenneth's direction and approached the solid-looking wall with the picture of a darkened path beyond it. He tentatively struck out with a hoof and didn't meet any resistance. The horse sighed and moved on forward. Immediately their surroundings went dark, and they had a brief sensation of falling. In response, Bucephalus's wings briefly snapped out and steadied them. He lit on solid ground. As their eyes adjusted, Kenneth gasped in appreciation of the beauty of this glowing path lit by the moon. The moon itself appeared extraordinarily big and close. Gently moving fog to either side of them seemed to glow with a light of its own. It had the feel of a quiet night on the lake. Normal night sounds of crickets and singing tree frogs resonated nearby. Lapping water licked at some distant shore, and he thought he could also hear faint music. Strong floral scents wafted on the slight breeze. Roxy waited for them to get their bearings and took off at a flat-out run. Beneath the riders, the horses' hooves struck sparks as they galloped at breakneck speed along the path after the dog. The surreal environment made Kenneth think of an impressionist painting. He imagined the stones being made of the moonlight itself, with their spirit selves flying high above the flat fields and mountains of the earth below. He laughed out loud and shook his head at his fanciful imagination. Roxy finally turned onto a narrower side path of dirt. She slowed slightly at a high stone archway and made a mighty leap through. Roxy disappeared again. Keep going, Kenneth said, urging Bucephalus forward. Don't stop. Just jump where our hound did. The stallion checked his stride slightly, collected, and did as Kenneth bade him jump over an imaginary hurdle. They came to a sliding stop behind Roxy out in bright sunlight again. Ow! I should have brought sunglasses, Kenneth complained, and partly covered his eyes. As he blinked in the bright light, he realized that not all the heat and sparkle was coming from the sunshine. He looked around, noting the details of their new environment as he allowed his horse to cool and his breathing to relax. Kenneth patted his horse's neck and smoothed his mane. Good job, he said. In contrast with the footing they had just left, they found themselves on flat land in a carpet of white star-shaped flowers. Beyond their position was open air, where the land dropped off abruptly. A huge white bird lazily circled on the currents high above them. Acres of solid forest filled their vision to the horizon. Curiously, there was a split in color as the trees to their left were a verdant green with white fluffy clouds sailing overhead that made shadows skirt along the landscape. By contrast, to their right the terrain was reminiscent of a winter wonderland. The trees flashed silver and sparkled like sunlight on choppy waves, yet they didn't look white. Between the two forests was a solid line of separation. They all stared at the astounding sight. "Oh, wow! That's gorgeous!" Kenneth breathed. "But what's causing that? I can't tell from up here," he addressed the hound. "Where do we go next, girl?" Woofing at them, the dog turned to look out over the valley. She walked to the edge and stood sniffing the air. "That way? Okay. So, how are we supposed to get down? Do we jump? Is there another trail or some other way?" Kenneth responded. Roxy barked and pointed her nose at the bird, jumping up and down. She followed it with her eyes as it soared through the air. Kenneth quickly worked out what the black and tan hound was telling him. "Okay, I get jump and bird out of that." He smiled at the dog. "So, we fly this time?" In response, Roxy wagged her tail and barked 3 times. She looked over the edge of the bluff to the green forest and back to the bird. She sat down, panting. "So, that's not all. What else?" He thought hard. "Roxy, do the laws of physics apply here in this place?" He nodded his head when the dog barked her assent. He spoke out loud conversationally for his horse's benefit. "All right, Bucephalus, we need to watch the bird, see what the air currents are doing. Where are the drafts going? Maybe we can glide across that expanse," he said hopefully. Quietly, they watched the bird as it flew across the valley. Kenneth noticed that it tended to stay over the green forest and avoid the sparkly foliage next to it. He watched it glide smoothly and slowly circle upward like a hunting bird of prey. It folded its wings and dove down, only to snap them open a second later and catch another updraft. Kenneth smiled slightly as he analyzed the bird's flight path. "We should be fine. Oh, wait. Uh-oh." He watched the bird edge over the line that demarcated the 2 sections of forest. It suddenly wavered in the air and dropped like a stone. It struggled, flapping its wings in a desperate attempt not to crash. It barely managed to get to a point where it rose again on another thermal after it crossed back over the line. "That's not good." Kenneth bit his lip and watched for a while longer. He also noted that none of the floating clouds seemed to cross the line either. "We can't fly over the sparkly part. If we try, we'll crash badly," he said with a slight shudder. "I hate heights." "Okay, Roxy, so we're flying next. What direction do we need to get?" Roxy tucked her head and looked up at Kenneth with soulful eyes. She turned and pointed with her nose. The dog wagged her tail while she looked off to the right at the horizon. "I see. Well, there better be a way around. I guess we'll skirt around it unless we can fly down and walk through. Is there a path, I wonder?" For the first time, Roxy growled at them. Kenneth was taken aback when the dog snapped at the air and fell over at her back with her eyes closed. "Plain dead. Dead. Die. What the heck is that place?" Kenneth wrinkled his brow. "So, evidently, we don't want to find out. This place is full of surprises and misdirection. From our position, we have to go left to go right, and if we try to go over or through the sparkles, we'll die. Did that cover it, Rox?" The hound jumped to her feet and barked happily. Her blue eyes glowed and her tail wagging again. She approached her companions. "Come on aboard, Roxy. Bucephalus is strong enough to carry 2. Kenneth patted his leg. "My lap is the best place." Bucephalus stretched to lower himself for the dog. She leaped into Kenneth's lap, and he grabbed onto her to steady her in position. "This'll work, I think. Although maybe slightly awkward. Okay, if we need to stop somewhere or change direction, bark and point with your nose. 1 bark go left, 2 barks go right, and 3 barks to stop," he told dog. Kenneth patted his horse's neck. "Okay, hun. If you get tired and have to stop, you set us down away from the sparkles, whatever they are." Bucephalus nickered softly. He backed up several steps, feeling the difference in weight and balance on his back. He hunched and dropped one shoulder, and in response, Roxy moved slightly and resettled with a good grip on Kenneth's lap. The big horse extended his raven-colored wings. The two riders felt Bucephalus coil down into his powerful haunches and take off like a bullet, straight off the plateau. At first they dropped, but then caught an updraft, carefully circling like a hang glider. Kenneth held onto the extra neck strap and jammed his feet deep in the stirrups. He gritted his teeth and concentrated on keeping the dog steadied rather than allowing himself to look directly down. Toward the apex of the updraft, with his legs tightly tucked, Bucephalus tilted slightly over to the left to stay clear of the shiny place. Picking up momentum, he went into a long, swift glide. To maintain altitude, the horse flapped his wings between wind currents. Below them, the woodland sped by for miles. They stayed within sight of the line where the green forest ended, but didn't venture over it. Eventually the green forest narrowed, and Kenneth realized that Bucephalus's wing beats seemed to be slowing. He looked for a possible landing site, paying attention to the land features below. Soon a small lake caught his eye. It appeared to have a clearing in the narrow strip with enough room to land. A waterfall with a sunlit rainbow fed the lake. He couldn't see an outlet. Roxy noticed too and barked 3 times. "Is this a safe spot for a rest?" the teen asked the dog as Roxy worked her nose and wagged her tail. "Good." He tapped Bucephalus, and when the horse flicked an ear back, he pointed to the clearing. "Down!" he shouted above the wind whistling by. Bucephalus slowly circled down, and back-winged to stop their momentum just above the ground next to the water's edge. Roxy jumped off while Bucephalus was landing. She noisily lapped the clear water. Kenneth slid off his horse and plopped down. The horse daintily sniffed the water hesitantly. Kenneth realized what Bucephalus was about to do. He jumped up and grabbed his horse's head. "No," he said firmly. "Roxy is from this side of the separation between here and home. She can eat and drink from sources here. If you drink the water or even eat one blade of grass, you're stuck," he told him. "I think, though, that you can probably cool off with no ill effects, as long as you don't swallow any. Let me get our gear off of you. I have an energy bar in the pack and a flask of water. Both are from home. Scold insisted I pack a little extra for you." Kenneth offered his horse some clean water and an energy bar. He then unbuckled the girth and unhooked the straps to remove the saddle and bridle. He dropped their gear on dry land and watched his companion enjoy the water. Bucephalus waded into the lake. He folded his wings and rolled in the water, carefully not submerging his head. He came up snorting and shaking the wet from his glossy hide. Kenneth marveled at how easily those enormous wings could just be made to disappear like they weren't there. Yet impossibly, they were. A prickle up Kenneth's spine was the first indication that the 3 of them were no longer alone. He felt someone watching them. Bucephalus's head came up with his ears pricked to alertness. The horse reared and in 3 splashing leaps stood dripping by Kenneth's side. Bucephalus nudged his rider when the boy stood up and tried to see what his mount could hear and smell. Roxy sat beside them, looking in the same direction as the horse. Her blue eyes glowed, and her tail wagged so hard her rear end shook. An armed trio stepped out of the shadows wearing light armor suitable for fighting and quick movement. The warriors blended well with their surroundings in their dark green, brown, and gray attire. It almost appeared as if part of the forest separated from the tree line and walked toward them. They carried bows and long, slender swords. "You are here without invitation." Tall and slender, with blond hair and an exotic tilt to his smooth features, the leader addressed the human. His pointy elven ears showed through his long hair when he turned to speak to one of his companions. "They have a hound of the hunt with them." He frowned and turned his face back to look at Kenneth. "State your allegiance," the elf challenged. "Killing keeps them quiet for a little while, but they always come back." Vincent Kovich lay back on another motel bed, watching a cockroach crawl across the ceiling. A half-empty bottle of vodka and a pile of white powder cluttered the nightstand beside him. His last kill had been just hours ago, but there was already a rising murmur in the back of his head. A throbbing migraine made colorful spots dance in front of his eyes. Whispers in his head grew stronger, and he raised his hand to wipe his face, trying to push away the voices. It didn't work. It never worked. "Shut up! Shut up!" Vincent snarled. He stood up and punched the wall behind the bed. The peeling plaster looked like a face laughing at him. He punched the image again in the nose and felt something in his hand snap. The disheveled man grabbed his hand and howled in pain. Sinking to his knees beside the bed, he sobbed as someone on the other side of the wall pounded back. Faintly, Vincent heard someone shouting over his crying, "You shut up!" Laughing, like a hyena's bark, sounded in his head. All he could smell was rot and blood. Although he had showered hours ago, when he sniffed himself, he could still smell it, almost like the scent itself had crawled up his nose unbidden. He rose and washed his hands. Steam rose from the sink as he turned the water on as hot as it would go. It didn't help. His hands shook as he clawed at the skin of his fingers until the water took on a pink tinge. "It's not funny!" He screamed at the voice. It kept laughing. "You know," a different silky, smooth voice told him, "you can make him shut up. All it would take is a little more blood." "I bet that guy in the next room has money. You could get more drugs," a rough-hewn female voice suggested. Just have another stiff drink, mate. You'll be dandy." This one had a pronounced English accent. "Start a fire. Burn it down. You have a lighter? Make it burn," another one said. "The guy next door has a pretty daughter. You could get another girlfriend," a deep voice wheedled. The last one whispered an unending litany of names and places. As it spoke, images flashed through his head. Each one was more horrible than the last. Scenes of wanton horror and torture sent him to his knees again, gripping his thinning hair and pulling it. If clawing his own eyes out would work, he would have done it. Vincent looked up and blinked several times through his blurry vision. True blackness stirred above him in the mirror. He imagined a giant panther stalking him, and two flame-gold eyes peered through the glass into his soul. The hyena that had been laughing non-stop for hours abruptly shut up, and he reeled as the empty spot in his head made him dizzy. He rose to his feet as the blackness oozed through the mirror onto the sink, leaving the glass intact. Two paws with razor-sharp claws gripped the sides of the sink and pulled the rest of the darkness through the mirror. "Oh, what?" Vincent stuttered through his alcohol and drug-induced haze. This was far from his first hallucination, but it was most definitely the clearest. "Mine," the giant panther said simply. "I am here." Tiamori watched as the other demoni scattered in panic. One of them stopped and hissed at him. This one, the cat pounced and swatted. Taking the hint, the other demoni left Tiamori alone with Vincent. The voices mercifully stopped. "Shadow!" Vincent exclaimed. "My kitty! You're okay!" Tiamori turned and considered the man. His tail flipped for a moment, and Vincent watched him jump up onto the bed. Tiamori sniffed Vincent's scent and wrinkled his nose. Regret, thick and cloying, permeated the man's psychic scent. but so did denial and refusal of responsibility. Vincent still believed that he hadn't done anything wrong, and he was the victim. Vincent continued, "My shadow, I thought you were dead. I thought Kyle drowned you in the pond behind the house. I was 12, remember? I can't believe you found me again. You always did chase the nightmares away." The man sat down on the bed beside the cat and reached out to pet him. Tiamori didn't move except for his tail tip flipping slightly. He began to purr audibly and subtly manipulated the man's energy to dull the effect of the drugs. As Vincent ran his hand down the mussed, spiky fur of the black cat beside him, he dropped his shoulders, worked his neck a bit, and sighed. The lingering migraine he'd had for months was easing. He spoke conversationally to his cat. "I've been lonely since you've been gone, Shadow. That bastard Kyle tormented me for years after you left." He continued to pet his furry companion. "It'll be better now. He can't hurt us anymore. He drowned in the pond." Vincent smiled, remembering the day they dragged the pond for the bully's body. "We're safe now. Just the two of us." Vincent leaned over and slid his arms around Tiamori's shoulders. He began to cry inconsolably as he held the black cat close. The cat, in turn, gently put his chin on Vincent's shoulder, nuzzling his cold nose up to the man's neck. They stayed like that until Vincent cried himself to sleep. Tiamori didn't move. While the man touched him, the spirit pulled apart his memories and sifted them. He ate the dark energy of his rage, selfishness, and hate until clarity beckoned in Vincent's mind. "Give it all to me," Shadow whispered to him gently. "You can tell me everything. I am here." Tiamori purred until he judged Vincent was ready to awaken with a clear mind, and the spirit was full of dark sustenance. The purring stopped. When Vincent awoke, the only emotion he had left was deep, profound sorrow. He sat up and felt the most alive that he had in years. He looked at the cat still sitting on his bed. "You aren't Shadow, are you?" "No," Tiamori replied simply. His deep, calm voice resonated smoothly in Vincent's head, as well as his ears. It contained no feeling of threat. "Why didn't you kill me?" Vincent wanted to know. "I have done horrible things." "Yes," Tiamori agreed. "You killed and lied and stole. You want to be safe, but no one is safe with you," he said gently. Vincent cringed, despite the lack of judgment in the cat's eyes. He heard scratching at the door. A sound like ice creaking heralded cracks that spread across the face of the mirror. "I cannot keep your demons at bay forever. Even now they howl at your door," Tiamori told the man calmly. "You have a choice to make. When you cast one daemon out, 7 return. You will shortly have the legions of hell on your tail." "Because I'm a killer," Vincent responded. "No," Tiamori told him, "because you let them in." He turned to look at the drugs, and Vincent's gaze followed the direction of the cat's view. "And because you failed to take responsibility for your choices. One single daemon rode you for the first murder. The rest were of your own free will." Tiamori let his bright gold eyes draw Vincent's full attention. He projected horror. He showed him the fear, the pain, and the desperation of his victims as each one died by Vincent's hand. "Nowhere is safe," Tiamori whispered. "What will you do?" He crept closer until he was but inches from the man's face, and the cat could smell the stale alcohol still on the man's breath. "Choose." Mirrored in the spirit's eyes, Vincent saw clearly the monster he had become. He then understood that he could go on as before. He could seek redemption from a priest and turn himself in, or he could end it all in this lousy motel room. He considered his options. It's too late. They're on me. I won't be able to leave, he told his companion. God will never forgive me for what I've done. They are coming. Tiamori's gaze seemed to bore into Vincent's cold heart. Cracks spiderwebbed up the walls under the pressure of the demoni trying to enter. In response, Vincent looked around for a weapon. The only thing he could see was a partly empty glass bottle. Taking the vodka by the neck, Vincent smashed it against the face of the wall. With precision born of practice, he turned to face the mirror and dispassionately watched himself slice his own throat open. His body went down, and in just a few minutes, he stopped twitching. Tiamori was still standing over the man's cooling, blood-splattered body when the horde of demoni broke in from multiple directions. They snarled and spat when they saw the death sprawled on the floor. There were mere scraps of emotional energy still floating in the air. Furious that their meal had been stolen, the demoni launched themselves on Tiamori. He disappeared beneath the seething mass of teeth and claws. He fought back furiously, and as their bodies began to pile up, some of their fellows broke off to feed on the fallen. More arrived, and Tiamori realized he was too overwhelmed to escape. Something large grabbed him from behind and yanked his head back. He saw a hellhound coming at his throat. He'd seen a hellhound rip a much larger demon practically in half to yank out their core and devour them. Tiamori tore the back of his neck out of the other daemon's grip and twisted so that the hellhound's pounce took the other daemon off his back. With no time left to waste and no retreat, Tiamori did what he had sworn to himself he would never do. He jumped free just long enough to call his only ally. Bucephalus! Tiamori backed up against the corner to make it easier to defend himself. He raised his spiked fur like a porcupine's quills to make himself look larger and more ferocious. In response to the call sent out on the threads of connection that Bucephalus had placed on the panther-like spirit, she touched Tiamori's mind. She read him and saw his desperate predicament. She growled in fury. His life is mine, not yours, demoni. A bright tear formed in the middle of the darkened hotel room. Bucephalus came out of the rift in full armor. She grabbed Tiamori by the neck, and he yowled in pain as her fingers slid into the grooves left by the daemon's teeth. He found himself hurled bodily through the rift to plop awkwardly in the garden of Anubis's temple. His nose landed on a gold-clad foot. Tiamori winced and looked upward. Well, then, Anubis sounded amused. I see you got yourself into a larger brawl than you could handle. Stay here until Bucephalus can deal with you herself. Anubis turned back to the garden scrying pool and watched his daughter. Bucephalus snapped her fingers, and the rift closed. She planted her spear quickly on the floor and threw up a dome shield around the room. The demoni stopped fighting among themselves and jumped around like a pack of trapped rats looking for a path to escape. Central to the moving mass, Bucephalus called upon her ability to wield flame and set herself. The demoni and the room ablaze with blue fire. The evil creatures trapped in the inferno crisped and died. Later, investigators would blame an electrical fire for the damage done to the hotel. When his dental records identified Vincent's burned body, young girls all over the Northwest breathed a sigh of relief. Nicely done. Anubis nodded. He turned and spoke to the panting cat. All are dead. You won't have any more foes on your back trail. There should not have been so many, Tiamori replied. I cast out 7, and I expected them to return with reinforcements and promises of feeding. But I have never seen so many gather in one place that quickly in the mortal realm. Bucephalus, who returned while the spirit was speaking overhead. I agree. We have a problem. She addressed Anubis and the cat. There are far more than the usual weak spots and tears in the veil. I believe when the spear of chaos was brought to this side, it weakened the barriers between worlds. Anubis's normal, scary-looking face looked even grimmer. We will see many more incursions if this is the case. We will need to call on my sister and brother to help close the holes. I will go talk to Bast and Set. I will also send a message to the High Court through Archangel Gabriel. This may get bad enough that we have to involve the angels. Father, I will take the Spirit of Sorrow and go hunting. His tracking skills may help us find the source of the weakness. If it is the spear in truth, we will endeavor to find it. Kibichet looked at Tiamori, who lay on his side resting. The Lady of Cooling Water walked over to Tiamori. I can't heal you. It's unfortunate, but I would do more damage to you if I dared to attempt it. How seriously hurt are you? Tiamori rose to his feet and turned so Kibichet could examine the wounds on his neck. That is pretty deep. Did you feed? She asked him. The cat dropped his head and refused to look at her. He knew it would do no good to lie to a power, so he answered her truthfully. Yes, I caused the death of a human. Did you offer him a choice? She raised an eyebrow. I did offer him a choice. He chose death, Tiamori answered. The terms of our agreement, Cat, is that you would not take the life of an innocent. The man you speak of was not innocent, and you did not kill him directly. You did, however, push the rules. We both know that since sorrow is your method of attack to feed, and sorrow is what you are called, you can still be held to account for suicide, she told him firmly. Your redemption is on the line. See to it that you do not carelessly repeat the action, Tears of Sorrow. For now, you balance the scales by preventing more deaths. Tiamori sat up straighter. Redemption? Surely this is not possible for one like me. He looked at Kibichet's back as she walked away. She didn't stop to explain. Tiamori silently thought on her words as he trailed her out to the moon pads to track and hunt. Once they reached the moon pads, Tiamori quickly took the lead. Kibichet shapeshifted into her large cat form, where she was able to stay apace with her companion. Together they quested for the tears and weaknesses that would indicate the passage of darkness. Kenneth carefully regarded what appeared to be 3 elves facing his own small team at the side of the lake. Several possible answers came to mind as the newcomers faced him. So far they had been polite and unthreatening, he reasoned, and they thought of his place as theirs. He settled for telling the truth. My allegiance, as always, is to the Most High God. We have a mission to find and claim the artifact called the Spear of Destiny, so we can use it to destroy Loki's weapon, which is said to be able to destroy everything on Earth and in heaven. It is not here, the lead elf stated. Kenneth nodded. Please, pardon us. We are passing through from where we were to where we are going. I wasn't aware of this territory being yours, Kenneth replied. He thought back to the rules of conduct he'd read that applied to encounters with the High Fae. It wouldn't do to be careless. We could not pass over the Silver Forest, so this was the only possible route. You were seen flying over our realm. At least that part of your story is true. I was sent to investigate. What is your name? The elf asked. Kenneth smiled as he was aware of the trap set. My friends call me Ken. Well met, elf. He bowed slightly, staying polite. The elf also smiled, noting the neat dodge of the question. He considered the boy, the horse, and the dog. Well met in return. He inclined his head. I see no threat here. As you are accompanied by Odin's hound, I believe you. Therefore I shall allow you passage. You may drink the water here. It is pure and will not cause you undue delay. However, I don't suggest eating anything. Your horse may find the grass not to her liking. Her liking? Kenneth grinned. Nice catch. Our kind have true seeing. We know what is underneath the illusions presented to us. She is very beautiful, the elf said. You also are very bright to my senses. Not sure how to respond to that, Kenneth settled for more pleasantries and simple communication. I appreciate your candor. We will take only what we need and no more. We will be on our way quickly. Make it so. The elf responded with a slightly deeper bow and moved away from them. Soon the warriors faded back into the forest. Kenneth knew that the elves were still watching. He would do the same under the circumstances if the situation were reversed. Okay, girl, get your stallion ass over there and get a good drink. I know you're still thirsty, he told his horse in an amused tone. I believe the elf told us the truth. Just don't try the grass, okay? While Bucephalus waded back in and took deep swallows of water, Kenneth drank some of the cool water himself. He waited a few minutes, and feeling no ill effects, he refilled their flasks. All right, an unexpected boost and a blessing. I'll take it, Kenneth remarked. He glanced around at the beauty of the peaceful setting and noticed its cleanliness. The elves know how to take care of their lands. There's no litter or anything to mar the looks of the place or poison their water supply. Kenneth shook his head. Too bad humans don't do as well. They worry about climate change and ignore the elephant in the room. Roxy woofed at Kenneth as he scraped the water off the horse's hide with his hands. There's no scraper, so this will have to make do, the teen said gently to Bucephalus. We don't have time to dry you properly. Roxy's getting impatient to go. Soon Kenneth mounted, and with the hound not asking to come back aboard, they followed her on foot. After leaving the clearing, they found a forest road that took them in the direction they were going. Roxy sniffed the air as she trotted along, but stayed on the road. Bucephalus was comfortable with the brisk pace and the surface. He moved quickly and settled into a ground-covering gait. Eventually the green forest ended in a grassy plain, and the road continued at the edge of the silver forest. When the road curved toward the silver trees, Kenneth finally got a good look at the barrier they had been avoiding. Wow, he exclaimed to Bucephalus. The trees look like metal growing out of the ground. Those leaves look razor-sharp, too. Eyeing the forest floor, he saw why the forest sparkled so much from above. Each leaf edge appeared as if it had been carefully forged and sharpened on a lathe to a razor-thin cutting blade. The edges caught the light, and when the wind blew, it knocked the leaves together. It sounded like the tinkling of many bells. Kenneth was astounded. Did those actually grow that way? It was impossible, yet there it was. Looking down on the path near one of Bucephalus's hooves, he saw one of the blade-like leaves. Hold there, Bucephalus. I want to examine a leaf. Bucephalus stopped and stood ready for his rider to dismount. Carefully picking it up, he realized it was stiff and felt cold like metal. Drawing it flat and lengthwise down his forearm, he also realized it cut his arm hair with precision. "Ha! I bet I could shave with this," Kenneth said. "I think I'll keep it for now." He wrapped the sharp leaf in a spare cloth from the saddle pack and placed it carefully where nothing would rub against it or cut anything. He took a last look around, and they moved on while watching carefully for fallen leaves that might cut their feet. He noticed further details as they went. Kenneth eventually realized that the Forest of Razors, as he'd begun to think of it, was home to small creatures that seemed unbothered by the blade-like leaves. Further into the woods, a large predator roared. He was relieved when the road curved away from the dangerous forest, and Roxy sped up the pace. When a meandering river blocked their way, Roxy stopped. Kenneth drew up beside the hound and halted. The road abruptly ended at the river's edge. It was too wide to jump. Tall grasses topped with heads heavy with seed waved to either side under a bright blue sky. Extending quite a distance, the grass was home to what looked like grazing horses and buffalo. Snow-capped rocky peaks rose beyond the plain. A light breeze brushed his face and played with his hair as he talked to his canine guide. "Are we supposed to swim across?" The hound growled and tucked her head. "No? Another danger I don't perceive?" Kenneth asked. Roxy barked and wagged her tail, tucking her head again. The otherworldly blue light in her eyes faded to plain brown, and she sat down in the road. "No again." The teen considered. "I missed something." Another affirmative bark. He suddenly realized the landscape appeared to him in tones of gray. Gone were the holographic colors and halos. "Wait. This all looks very normal. Did you lose the trail and bring us out on the earth?" "Ah, crap." Kenneth responded to her tail thumping the road. "Well, if you lost the trail, we're not close to our destination. We need to get you back to where you can pick up the trail again. So it's up to me. Hold on and let me think." Party Schwartze, hello, hello. Barbette, if you're still there, I hope you are doing well and you are feeling okay. All I can ask for. So now we've had Bucephalus. We've had Roxy. We've had elves. We saw the end to Victor. Victor, for those of you guys who were not aware, was somebody driven to basically be a serial killer by another demon. And there was a manhunt for him. It was all not good for him. He was having a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, a bad year, a bad lifetime, let's call it. And when given the choice, he decided that it was time for it to be over. So I will put out the thought here, everybody. If you ever get that feeling yourself, please make sure you talk to somebody. Suicide is never the answer. Talk to somebody, please. And we saw the spirit of sorrow join Kibachet. So, having good stuff here. So, it's time. Yeah, poor Vincent. I mean, honestly, he wasn't necessarily a good dude to begin with, but he was definitely driven into a very dark place by factors somewhat out of his immediate control. Because he was driven to that first thing by a demon and then just fell down the rabbit hole. But even prior to the demon, he was somewhat of a druggie and all of those other things. So, take that for what it's worth, but still not a place that I would want anybody to be. All right, guys, we've got some time left, so we're going to go ahead and do chapter 15 tonight as well. That's right, we're continuing. And for those of you guys who have stuck around to hear it, it is time now for you to find out what the Spear of Destiny is. The Spear of Destiny was the spear used to pierce the side of Jesus Christ. Way, way back in the day. Oh, way back in the day. It's been a while. So, in case you were wondering, that's what it was. And now you know, and knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe, a real American hero, fighting to 15 spaces between. Kenneth analyzed their surroundings versus all the places they had been and how they got from place to place. Each time he thought they had jumped a barrier or gone through something that looked like a hologram or mirage. He realized Roxy needed another directive command. So, Rainbow Bridge, Archway, Stone Screen, or whatever that was, high launch point? And this looks like the Great Plains and the Rocky Mountains. So what are we most likely to find here? Sparkles on the water drew Kenneth's eyes. Again, water seemed to want to guide their direction. He stood in the stirrups, looking in all directions at the lay of the land. To the right was the way they had come. He discarded that route out of hand. They couldn't cross, and the only direction was left along the river bank. The sound of the water lapping the banks against the rocks gave him an idea. The flow was coming from their left, and passed in front of them. He made a decision. Roxy, go left along the bank against the flow of the water. Seek a rainbow or another jump point. I'm pretty sure if we came out with you, we should be able to go the other direction, too. This water has to come from somewhere, and logic dictates probably the mountains, which means waterfalls. As bright as it is out here, we should be able to find a rainbow, yes? The hound woofed at him and took off running. By late afternoon, judging from the sun's angle, Kenneth decided to rest his horse and let him and Roxy drink from the river. The current's strength was greater here in response to the land rising toward the mountains. The water's white-capped waves washed over the stones of the creek. Wildlife was plentiful. The air was full of bird songs and the smell of pine needles. Fish jumped in the river, and squirrels busily looked for nuts. Kenneth caught his breath when a huge, solid white stag separated itself from the trees. As it approached the whitewater river on the opposite bank, it stared at them. It bugled, and Kenneth almost got the feeling that it greeted him. The deer dipped his head and bowed at his wave. A prickle of recognition caused goosebumps. Wait, didn't the legend say Skuld sometimes rides a white stag? Kenneth said softly out loud. He laughed suddenly, startling some noisy crows out of the trees. I swing! I thought you guys were gone and left us all alone out here, Kenneth yelled across the water. Long and shrill, a whistle sounded from behind them. The stag gathered itself, reared, and leaped upward. Snowy wings snapped out, and Icewing landed beside them moments later. Skuld laughed and vaulted up on her horse. You figured it out. We have been with you the whole time. You simply didn't recognize us. Remember the bird flying over the green forest? We showed you how to work out the flying route, but you had to figure it out yourself. Skuld told him. I get it. Kenneth nodded. You said you'd watch, but not help. What about now? We took a wrong turn somewhere. No, you're doing fine. You needed to stop for water in a safe location, so you were allowed to emerge on the earth. This will be the last exit. You are pushed now for time. We are seeing an unusual number of demoni on the move. You will have to move fast to stay out of trouble. I will have to leave you soon. I must help stem the tide of taint. Your quest is more urgent now than ever. The fingerprint of the Spear of Chaos is all over this, but you must not turn aside. Find the Spear of Destiny and bring it back safely. You're talking different than you were before about this. Something's changed, Skuld replied cryptically. I'll stay with you a little further, as long as I can, but then I will send you on. All right, then. Let's go. Roxy, seek, Kenneth ordered. They continued at speed along the river as it rose among the rocks. Kenneth could hear the roar of a waterfall close by when they stopped again for water and a little grazing for the horses. The sun shone with a golden cast in the evening light. If they were going to use a rainbow as a jump point, Kenneth knew they would have to hurry. Falling into a sparkling pool, the waterfall wasn't quite deafening, but was still very loud. The light was angled just enough to form a bright rainbow in the mist. To reach it, they would need to jump from the riverbank. Skuld went first. Icewing leaped again, aided by his powerful wings. Roxy and Bucephalus were close on their heels. This time it seemed like they fell through the shimmering light, but instead of landing in the water, their surroundings instantly changed again. Bucephalus's hooves hit solid stone, and they came up short with a large, heavily armored and stern-looking Viking blocking their progress. Skuld saluted and rode up to him without fear. "Greetings, Heimdall." "Aye, sister. Again there is a mortal on the Rainbow Bridge. The last time this did not end well," he said, and looked piercingly at Kenneth, who sighed. "But you accompany him." "Heimdall?" Kenneth said. He was getting tired of being questioned at every turn. "Skuld doesn't need to speak for me. We are here by our own free will, but not of our choosing. We have just been informed that we need to pass through quickly and be about our business to foil Loki's plans. I take it there's a reason you are standing in our way? Do you have news or assistance for us?" Heimdall looked surprised at the boy's directness and lack of fear. He looked closer. Amber heat flared in his brown eyes. No, not a boy, and not mortal either, though he wore mortal skin. "My apologies, warrior." He saluted and stood aside. Bucephalus reared to full height with his raven-black wings open and bellowing. His front feet touched the ground, and the dark-colored horse folded his wings in with an impish snort. Together they made an impressive pair. Heimdall watched them take the lead following the hound, with the Valkyrie on her snowy steed running close behind. The rainbow quivered from their passing and faded as the sun moved in the sky, closing the portal where they passed. They found themselves on the moon paths again, speeding through the dimly lit corridors. A couple of shadows launched themselves at the horses and quickly went down under them only to be trampled. The riders didn't stop, but Skuld made sure they would no longer move as she passed with her spear. When the path ahead lightened to take on the cast of sunset, Bucephalus came to a sudden sliding halt. Kenneth was glad of the saddle that kept him in his seat rather than on the horse's neck. "What is it?" Kenneth asked. Bucephalus nickered and stood steady. Behind them, Skuld, who had managed to stop without knocking over the black horse, solved the puzzle. "Dreamer, or it appears to be. This is where discernment matters," she reminded him. "Things are not always what they seem. Remember?" Kenneth judged the child was maybe 5 or 6. She wandered down the road toward them in a pink nightdress. Her stuffed bunny was cuddled in her arms, nearly hidden by the girl's long, light brown hair. Brightly smiling, she came close to the horses who towered over her head. "Horsey!" she giggled. Bucephalus gently sniffed her and blew in her hair. She wrapped her arms around his face. "Nice, Horsey!" She giggled again. "Would you like to come have some tea, nice Horsey? You can come to my tea party." Kenneth gently addressed the little girl. "You have tea? My horse loves tea. But we have important matters to take care of." "Are you a knight on a noble quest like a bedtime story my daddy reads to me?" She beamed up at him without fear. "Why, yes." Kenneth humored the child. "I left my kingdom to go find something very special to protect it." "My bun is special too," the little girl said. "My mommy gave it to me before she died of cancer. She said it would be my friend and protect me from boogeymen in my closet." She held up the stuffed rabbit in both hands, even though there were tears in her eyes. She smiled again as she had an idea. "Would you like to hold Bun for good luck, Sir Noble Knight?" Kenneth looked around at Skuld for help. She was smiling, but remained silent. He shrugged. Leaning down, he reached out a hand and took the offered rabbit from the child. Surprised, he could feel the love that the child had imbued in the toy. "You had to cuddle her like this." She crossed her arms to her chest and hugged herself. Bucephalus nosed her head, making the child giggle again. "Your hair is very pretty and your eyes pretty, Horsey. Here, this has always helped me." The little girl reached up and removed a light blue barrette from her hair. Taking a firm hold, she grabbed Bucephalus's forelock and pulled his head down. He was unresisting when the child placed it in his hair. She clapped her hands and squealed in delight. "You have a blue eye the same color," the child said. "You can keep it so you can see." Bucephalus nickered softly when the cute little girl planted a kiss on his nose. Kenneth offered the well-loved toy back to the child. She snatched it with both hands and hugged it fiercely. "My bonbon," she said, and walked off. "Bye-bye, pretty horsey and noble knights." She waved one last time, and then ignored them. Kenneth watched her go for a moment, and saw her sit down on a blanket with a tea set, quietly humming to herself and holding her rabbit. The whole scene abruptly disappeared. "What the—" He then turned to Scold in surprise. "A dreamer, as I said," Scold said. "They manifest their own personal reality and can bring items with them from Earthside when they spirit walk. The hair clip she just gave your horse is one such item. Because it is such, and a gift, you two may keep it. It won't disappear or transform into something else. She disappeared because she went back home in either a dreamless sleep or she woke up." "Okay." Kenneth squinted and rubbed his face, brushing his hair back. "I'll figure that one out later. Let's proceed, shall we?" They continued from there with riders and horses, both staying alert for more attacks or more innocents wandering about. Bucephalus held his head a little higher and strutted as he trotted. Kenneth didn't complain about his ride being slightly bouncier. "Proud of your new jewelry, are you?" Kenneth laughed a little. Bucephalus flicked an ear back at him, but only snorted in reply. The next time the sky lightened, Roxy stopped at a crossroads and sniffed around. She sped up again, this time on the leftward-bearing road. Here the road quickly became gravel, and the riders moved the horses to the shoulder so they could travel on the grass instead of sharp stones. Roxy barked several times and sped up to a run, baying as she went. They sped past succulent-appearing fruit trees and flowering gardens. The further they went, the brighter it got, and the scents were almost cloying, they were so strong. Bucephalus scented something new besides flowers, and he slowed to a walk before he finally stopped. When Kenneth nudged him, he shook his head and switched to the other side of the road, snorting a loud alarm. He sidestepped facing an object in a heap at the side of the road where he'd just avoided walking. Icewing also kept his distance, eyeing it carefully. Both horses blew and breathed deeply. Bucephalus stuck his nose in the air, sampling the scent. He bellowed and struck out furiously with one foreleg. His ears were flat against his skull. Kenneth saw that Icewing also had his ears flattened and was glaring. It looked vaguely human, but was covered in something white, whatever the object was. It twitched and something rolled behind it. Kenneth heard Scold suck in her breath, but she didn't say anything. The teen realized she didn't have to add. Either it wasn't dangerous, or it was, and it was deceptive. Bucephalus didn't trust it, and he was inclined to listen to his horse's opinion. If it was dangerous, it might not be a good idea to leave it behind him to come up on their trail. So, what are you?" Kenneth asked.
Help me."
The object moaned. It twitched again and lifted itself off the ground. It was a woman. She was lovely, and her top half that they could see was scantily clad. She dripped with jewelry, and her face had an exotic tilt. The woman's hands were obviously stuck and covered with white sticky thread like her bottom half. She could not move except to push up with her hands and arch her back. Her large, well-shaped breasts jiggled as she moved. Kenneth was skeptical. "Are you trying to get free or display yourself?" he asked her.
"I'm trapped. Can you not get me loose before the spider comes back?"
She batted her eyes at him and flung her long, red, curly hair over her shoulder. She pouted.
"If you help me, I'll be forever grateful. If you could at least cut my hands free."
Kenneth dismounted to take a closer look. Bucephalus, still with his ears back and muscles tense, stayed with him. Kenneth examined the woman's predicament. She was webbed in so thoroughly that she had no way to free herself. If there was anyone else behind her also stuck, he couldn't tell. The extra lumps made it look possible. He looked again at his horse, who still looked dangerously angry. He removed the bladed leaf from the pack and carefully unwrapped it. When the woman saw the glint of what looked like a knife in his hand, she looked hopeful.
"Oh, thank you, kind sir."
Kenneth realized that the cocoon was relatively dry and cut fairly easily using the metal leaf. When he nearly had her one hand freed, he heard another female voice above them speaking.
"I wouldn't do that if I were you."
He looked up and realized a giant spider was approaching on a thick strand of web that spun out from its body while it crept toward them. The woman on the ground started screaming with genuine fear and struggling when she heard the spider approach.
"Unless, of course, you want to be eaten today."
Stepping back, he watched the spider warily. "I'm tough and stringy and don't taste good," he responded to the implied threat.
"I don't think she much cares. Lamia will eat anything,"
the spider told him.
"By all means, continue if it makes you happy. I won't stop you."
The spider's surprising words made him pause. Kenneth looked at the two females and pulled his sword free of his belt. He chopped free the remaining spiderweb that pinned the webbed hand in one smooth motion. The Lamia then used her free hand to pry at the webbing, entrapping the other. Her hands were nearly free when the spider threw a strand of silk to the back of the woman's head and yanked her head back. Furious that they might thwart her escape, she hissed, reared back, and swiped at Kenneth with long talons. Her snake-like fangs caught the light, and she snicked out a forked tongue. The snake woman reached out forward again in entreaty.
"Help me?"
Bucephalus stomped on the Lamia's hand for its trouble. It hissed again in pain when it found itself pinned back down where it couldn't reach Kenneth. Bucephalus bellowed and struck out with his other hoof, breaking the creature's nose. His rider didn't try to stop him. He winced. "Ooh, that's gotta hurt," Kenneth said. The spider addressed Kenneth again.
"Do you still want your prize?"
She crept closer.
"I can cut the silk for you,"
she offered helpfully. No thanks," he said. You can have it. Whatever it is."
"Good choice," the spider said. "I will take care of this personally. She has been eating my prey and killing my daughters. It would have been such a bother to catch her again when she was done with you."
Without another word, the spider jumped forward onto the Lamia's back and bit its head off. The head rolled into the ditch while several feet of webbing undulated and thrashed behind the headless body. "Well, then," Kenneth said, "it looks like we're done here." He caught the giant spider, quickly webbed the remaining body of the snake, and turned away. Remounting Bucephalus, he found Skuld was no longer behind him. He turned Bucephalus in a circle to find the Valkyrie standing calmly beside the giant spider in deep conversation. Since they didn't appear in distress, Kenneth shook his light golden brown hair out of his face and settled deeper in the saddle. "They'll catch up, hun. Let's go." He patted his horse on the neck. "Good job, by the way." A few minutes later, Skuld came trotting up behind them. Icewing came alongside, bringing his rider close enough to talk and keep moving.
"Arachnia says that she has seen an unusual number of fell creatures creeping through her domain. This last one has been the most problematic."
"Arachnia? So that's who that was. Interesting," Kenneth said.
"What is interesting?"
Skuld asked. "That she didn't attack us. But I guess she didn't feel the need with so much food already right there," he said.
"She wouldn't have whether the food was there or not. She's smart enough to know the difference in whether a snack will be, shall we say, approved,"
Skuld said. "So the legend is probably true. She's not truly a spider. She was just made to be one," Kenneth observed. Another thought hit him, and he continued. You were both weavers, so you know each other, or at least share something in common.
Arachnia and I, we do not share ill will for one another. Skuld smiled. She is a neutral personality. Neither does she venture out much to come for a friendly chat.
That makes sense. A spider doesn't go around on a flying horse like the Valkyries. She's kinda tied in one place. Kenneth laughed. He allowed Bucephalus to walk to the next crossroad.
Skuld sighed when they stopped. This is as far as I will go with you, she said. You are doing fine on your own, and you're making good decisions. I need to go. Too many signs are pointing to something going wrong with the fabric of the veil itself. Stay with Roxy. Stay safe and protect each other. I will see you soon.
She saluted and left them. Roxy started trotting again, and rather than stay on the road, she sniffed around a steep rise with a jumble of boulders. Let me guess. Another jump? He said to Bucephalus's pricked ears. We gotta go, Rox. Make it a shortcut, Kenneth shouted to the hound. Roxy stopped and looked at her companions. She tilted her head and looked behind her, wagging her tail and woofing. Her blue eyes looked like stars as the light darkened again. She circled once and raised her nose to the wind. Watching them, the hound jumped down from where she had intended they go. She barked excitedly and took off at another run along the road where it was easier for man and horse to follow. Roxy led them to and through a stone archway a few sharp turns later. The trail led downward and kept going. The moon paths grew steeper and winding. In places there were stone stairs that the horse navigated carefully. Roxy continued with her nose to the ground, and quested after the faint prickle of power dimmed by distance. Phosphorescent light glowed to the sides of what appeared to be a colossal underground cavern. It highlighted a large river that they skirted on a wooden walkway. Somewhere in the distance they could hear the faint splash of an oar. A chill went up Kenneth's spine, and he shivered. Creepy, he whispered. Why do I feel I'm about to meet death around the corner at any moment? The sound of his quiet voice echoed loudly in the chamber. Instead of crossing the river, they turned aside and went through another archway continuing down. The heat hit their faces like an oven. Kenneth noticed lava slowly oozing in a deep chasm capped by black stone where it was partially cooling. They soon passed by, and it grew cooler again to the relief of horse and rider. Yet another large cavern loomed ahead of them. It was black as pitch, with no light at all. Roxy woofed and whined as she led them through the darkness. Once his eyes adjusted, Kenneth realized that he could still see, although there was no light source. A blue glow lit their way, and Roxy showed up in the dimness. He smiled. That gives new meaning to the term headlight. The little girl's gift, imbued with her innocence and love so that Bucephalus could see, glowed brightly. Okay, horsey, watch your footing, since you have the light, Kenneth told him in an amused tone. He smoothed Bucephalus's heavy mane. Some shortcut, huh? I wonder what the long cut would have looked like. You think? He cleared his throat, trying to peer through the dimness. There's nothing here, just a lot of blackness. Why are we down here, Roxy? She barked once and stood on her hind legs, pointing at the featureless ceiling with her nose. It had lowered enough to perceive shapes and shadows in the light they carried. What is it? Oh! A colossal, sinuous shape moved by overhead as if swimming in the ooze of the primordial deep. Kenneth cringed and counted. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 1,120 feet long. Dear God, he breathed. There's not supposed to be anything that big out there, according to science. He felt the drip of something wet land on his forehead. He reached up and wiped it. It was slightly gritty. Gingerly he smelled it. Salt water, fish. It smells like the ocean. Then it dawned on him. We're under the ocean. We're going somewhere that you have to cross the sea? Roxy barked assent and took off running again. It was a flat, slightly sandy surface, and the space narrowed to a tunnel. By the time it widened out again, they had slowed to a fast trotting pace. They were still going strong when they reached what looked like an open doorway. It looks like we're finally getting somewhere. Another jump point, maybe? Except they found their way suddenly blocked. Ah, crap! Kenneth exclaimed, pulled his sword, and yanked Bucephalus into a quick stop and rear. The animal in front of them barked and jumped up and down. Why wouldn't I think that thing is real given everything else we've come across? We let our guard down. Damn it, Roxy, he swore. The three-headed dog towered over the trio. Its shoulders were nearly as broad as the tunnel. The spotted hound held Roxy dangling from the mouth of the center head. The other two heads barked deafeningly. It half-heartedly pounced at Kenneth and crouched with its tongues lolling. It wagged its massive tail. Oh my gosh! It's just a big puppy dog! He wants to play, Kenneth told Bucephalus. He decided to try the direct approach. Cerberus, put Roxy down! Bad dog! Kenneth yelled firmly. However, at the sound of his name, the three-headed dog just got more excited. Barking enthusiastically, Cerberus turned tail and ran, carrying Roxy like a puppy. Bucephalus didn't need urging and immediately pursued the three-headed dog. Warmth and light intensified as they turned into a narrow hallway. Here there were neatly formed bricks and wall sconces. At the end of the hall, Cerberus stopped before a tall and stern-looking man in a black toga. A simple gold brooch held the garment at the shoulder. Bucephalus careened to a stop just behind the dog. He was blowing hard, and his ears lay flat along his skull in anger. Kenneth wasn't in much better humor.
Spot, what did you bring home this time? Another trophy? Ah, a puppy?
If you please, we need our dog back, Kenneth told the man. I assume you are Hades, since our hound got snatched by a three-headed dog?
Cerberus doesn't have much company down here, so he gets a bit lonely,
the tall figure in the toga replied.
And yes, you all correctly identified me as the terrible, frightening Lord of the Underworld, and my loyal doggy, Spot.
Yeah, okay. About our dog. Kenneth pointed at Roxy, in the hold of the giant dog who towered over him, even mounted. We can't find our way out without her. We're only here to...
Yeah,
Hades interrupted.
Yes. Every couple of millennia, some hero with delusions of grandeur comes down here to free a loved one from my vile clutches. Who is it this time? I see you already have a soulmate with you, so it can't be her.
Kenneth glared at Hades and finished his sentence. Pass through. He growled through gritted teeth. We were only passing through to somewhere else. We had no intention of coming to your house, except your big puppy there kidnapped our guide and ran off with her. Cerberus barked again and lay down with the hapless Roxy between his paws. He licked her vigorously. Cerberus's three heads all panted happily as he woofed at his master.
I see, said Hades. Well, if you aren't here to liberate someone or make a deal, then I suppose whatever you are up to is not my problem. I'll have Spot take you to the border and release you. I can't have you wandering about loose here. I'm charged with taking care of souls who are in between, neither bad nor good, until such time as our Father calls them to judgment or reincarnation. Having the living mix with the dead is not good for discipline. It's messy. Just not good practice, you understand.
Understandable, Kenneth nodded. I am not particularly interested in the dead anyway. I'm trying to rescue the living and prevent a war. he told the disinterested power.
Sure, sure, Hades said. So, let's get you out of here and gone. Besides, I don't want to deal with Odin if he comes looking for his hound. Cerberus, you can't keep the puppy, okay? Put her down and take these people to the border in the direction they were going.
Hades instructed his dog and patted all three heads. Dismissed, they found themselves escorted out. Cerberus herded them along until they emerged from Tartarus on a simple dirt footpath leading upward. The three-headed dog left them there with a regretful whine and bounded off into the darkness. Kenneth was relieved to be on the move again with Roxy in the lead. Compared with the maze they had just left, the new path turned out to be a direct route with the shortcut he'd hoped for. Silently waiting like a sentinel in the moonlight, another stone archway marked the end of the trail. This one was white marble and gently glowed in the light Bucephalus carried on his forelock. Roxy trotted pertly up the stairs and stopped in the center, where a blue mosaic sun decorated the floor. Bucephalus carefully picked his way upward and followed Roxy through the jump point. Once the team went through, Kenneth realized they had reached their destination. Roxy led them a short distance to a gate attached to a huge wall with guard posts everywhere. The dog stopped and sat down, looking at it. Yes, like, Hades is such a funny figure in mythology because he has always been like the one who truly did his job. Didn't get sidetracked by other things. He really did his job. And I love that he called Cerberus Spot because I have heard in the past that Cerberus, through a couple of lines of things, is a translation to Spot. So the dog that guards the underworld is named Spot. How much better could that be? I love it. All right, everyone. Well, that is going to reach the end of our reading for this evening. So I want to start off by saying thank you to all of you. The greatest gift that you can give me as a streamer is the gift of your time, and I appreciate that you guys gave me the gift of yours this evening, whether it was for 5 minutes or the full 2 hours of reading. Thank you for being here. As always, spot or striped or spotted. Yeah, it's just hilarious that that's what Cerberus translates into. Because Cerberus sounds so mean. Spot, on the other hand, is a typical dog's name. Yes, Party Schwartze. Thank you. Thank you also to any new followers, Tegan Fox, Miss Shadow 69. If you guys are still here, thank you. I appreciate your jumping in and listening in on everything. Anybody out there in TikTok, Kick, Rumble, Twitch, YouTube, X, wherever you happen to be, thank you. Make sure you get out there and support the author. Her book is available on Amazon. This is book 2 in her series. Book 1 we didn't read. You're going to have to go and read Spear of Chaos all by yourself. Go pick it up. Then take a listen through or a read through here. I did record all of the chapters from tonight, as I have recorded all of them all along. So please feel free to jump out to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@SirArminius, or my Rumble channel, which I have no idea what it actually is, but just search Spear of Destiny and I'm sure you will find it. And you can watch the chapters, you can listen to me read the previous chapters, or again, stop out and pick up the book on Amazon and read along on your own. I read just about anything, Party Schwartze. I have a backlog of about 5 or 6 books right now from indie authors to read. Really what I do is I support independent authors by helping to give them an audience for their books in a way that they have not been able to do otherwise. Because for our indie authors, it's very hard because they have to do every single part of it. They have to write the book, find an editor, get it all edited, find alpha and beta readers, get it all read, do the publishing, do the marketing, do everything that comes along with it. So this is my little way of giving back at the same time as, heightening my skills as a voice actor as I get to go through and do these different things. So if it's an indie author, I'm absolutely happy to read it. Just the only thing that I don't read is AI stuff. If it's not AI written, I'm happy to get involved. I will be back again on Tuesday, everyone, where we will continue with chapter 16 of the book. But again, chapters up through 15 will all be available for you to listen to on the YouTube channel. I hope you guys will stop out there and listen to it, and make sure that you're getting out there and supporting the author Mary Lou Wells, and our editor, Kira Holiday. Thank you all for your time this evening. I hope to see you guys again really soon, and have yourselves a wonderful rest of your weekend. Good night, everybody.